Conquest that does have a built-in failure rate if you end up with an opponent that doesn't have any one of the decks you're targeting, but I think it's reasonable to expect that there would be some Shadow Priest, some Face Hunters around, and he's absolutely hit the target versus Glory here. I will say though, Chonsu did lose to Surrender, who was also running Shadow Priest, so it's not a given that even though you're running 3 or 4 favorable matchups that you get to sweep. But starting off things with the Fel Demon Hunter versus the Garrote Rogue, this is already a super interesting matchup because I feel that the Garrote Rogue, if I were in Chonsu's position, I would have banned away because it has a good matchup versus Fel Demon Hunter and versus Quest Shaman. But maybe Chonsu respects the Brute Demon Hunter a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm starting to think about, in terms of mind games, maybe Chonsu wasn't expecting his Warrior to get banned. Maybe he's expecting his Demon Hunter to get banned instead, and then Warrior has a pretty good matchup against Garrote Rogue, I think, just because of all the armor that it can gain. But even then, Warrior's going to have a good matchup against the Brute Demon Hunter as well, I think, most of the time. So I'd be curious, I would be curious to know what Chonsu was thinking with his ban strategy. But either way, starting things off here, it looks like Glory has got himself, for this matchup, a pretty premium hand.
Yeah, that's great. Having the Shroud of Concealment to draw a couple more minions, the Octobot to discount. All he really needs is field contact and he can start popping off. The prep can be used with the Shroud of Concealment to potentially put a minion on the board that can't be targeted by Chonsu at the moment. It's not entirely safe even if stealthed because there is Immolation Aura and that type of thing here. Fel Barrage just used by Chonsu, so maybe Glory's not hoping to play around that in particular. But I do think this turn will end up being draw. He doesn't necessarily need to respect the Moarg this early, but Chonsu is certainly showing that he knows he has to race the Rogue in this matchup, just launching the Fel Barrage to the face, get the Skull in outcast position, because as soon as this Rogue empties their deck, Chonsu is 100% dead to the Garrotes.
Absolutely. I've got to say that I'm not certain that it's correct, but it's my inclination to play this the way that Glory is doing with, well, drawing field contact, yes, that would be my inclination to do as well. But to not use the prep there, because I've realized that one thing compared to a lot of other players is I'm very, very greedy with the preps. I like to save it for when I don't have mana to go with, you know, a second Shroud, or maybe the Swindle later on. But most importantly, the combo turn, when you can save it to go with your Garrotes on the same turn. But maybe I'm being a little bit overly greedy with my preps there.
It's certainly matchup dependent. For Glory here, I don't think there was any minion that he particularly wanted to play if he got it off of the Shroud, because he already had an Octobot in hand, right? That's kind of the only one that you sometimes want to preload on board with stealth this early. Field contact also not playable unless you wanted to expend coin. But certainly Glory does have to go off now because Chonsu's been firing on all cylinders, just attacking with the weapons, kind of cosplaying Soul DH in this matchup is what you have to do just to try and make sure that the Rogue doesn't have the time to put together their ideal combo. And he has managed to fish out 2 Battle Cries from Glory's hand, which potentially makes the field contact train a little bit shorter. So Chonsu rewarded for that early play indeed.
Yeah, it's a really interesting balance here for Glory because he decided to go middle of the road in terms of how many battle cries he played. Obviously, I love the play of Cult Neophyte. I think it's very obvious that a turn 5 skull was being set up from Chonsu, but not playing out the prize plunderer. You could have just killed a Moarg. You could have got more pressure on board and maybe got some chip damage in. But as you said, that's a less powerful field contact turn. It's very, very difficult to know exactly where the balance lies in terms of tempo versus combo.
Yeah, and I'm a bit surprised to see from Glory just starting off with the Kazakhs to start the field contact turn, because that's very expensive. He is guaranteed to get a Golem with Battle Cry on 1 cost, which can amount to sometimes 2 more draws, but it looks like he is starting off with Prize Plunderer instead, and he could pivot to Foxy with second Prize Plunderer because he gets to play 2 more cards with the field contact instead. Didn't get to see what type of Golem he built, but it is the draw card. Okay, so that's 2 draws with field contact. Very, very powerful stuff. Built up a very strong board going into what he expects is a Skull turn, and gonna step the field contact here to make sure the train can keep going next turn. It's a pretty fast pop-off indeed, even though he had to spend 3 mana on Kazakhs.
And speaking of fast pop-off, a fast response is demanded from Chonsu, but at the moment, he's not getting the cards he needs. Fellscreen Blast is something, I suppose. It allows him to clear off at least most of the damage on this board, but still, minimum, there's going to be 4 damage on the other side.
Yeah, missing on the Immolation Aura is quite painful here. Not that the Demon Hunter has to be scared of dying on board a lot of times in these matchups, because if the Rogue isn't guaranteed to get all the Garrots off the top, they don't actually have that much immediate burst available, and Chonsu is very likely to get more healing in the near future. It's really just about whether or not Chonsu is able to keep pushing face in the time that Glory has kind of distracted him with these minions. Second Octobot picked up now. Penflinger, a card that not everybody is playing in Garrot Rogue, in the place of Wand Thief. Yeah. Looks like Glory's gonna go Passage instead, try to delete 1 or 2 more cards from the hand. Although without board space, I'm not really sure what he can play, because the 2 Brain Freezes were in the original hand.
I mean, I think honestly, anything that you can play, you will. Like a Swindle is fantastic. Yeah, Prep as well, sure, why not? Just to be able to keep turboing through your deck. I wonder, okay, Prep, Swindle, and then the Secret Passage. I was wondering if he was setting up to play a Garrot, but this I think makes a lot more sense. He's just trying to get rid of every card in his deck that he can, set up for that play next turn where he just has lethal. The only thing stopping him right now is his board space, which I think can be very easily dealt with.
Yes. And we do know that the last remaining cards are the 2 Ethereal Aug Merchants, it looked like. Sorry, in that other passage. And that means he will definitely have enough damage here. Against decks that don't get above 30 health, all you need is 2 spell damage. So whether that's 2 Aug Merchants or 1 Aug Merchant and a Shadow Step, you can get it done. You also need Receptor minions for the Aug Merchant target. So anything with greater than 1 health is a valuable resource. But for Chonsu, still not an Immolation Aura, but plenty of healing available.
Well, I think weirdly enough, his best chance of winning this game is the exact opposite of Immolation Aura. He can't clear this board because he'll just die the moment he does it. I think maybe, even though it's still possible with like double Brain Freeze and Penflingers, you can at least make it much more difficult for your opponent to execute the combo. Maybe they mess things up, and then you try and get there with Il'gynoth, the weapon, a bit of spell damage, a 0-mana Fellscream Blast. I'm not certain that it's there at all, but realistically, I think that's his best win condition because he's just losing this game right now.
That is true. Yeah, clearing the board does seem like a futile effort because he will just lose the combo. So I think there is a way to set it up, right? Because Il'gynoth and Talented Arcanist with the 0-cost Fellscream is 9 damage.
Yeah.
So he just puts Glory down to 9 this turn, which he can with the Fury and Chaos Strike.
Sounds good to me.
There's Lifesteal on the other side, so I guess effectively he needs to put Glory down to 8, but that's still doable, right?
He's just roping out. Is this the way to do it? What is he setting up for here? He can go for Fury plus Hero Power and a Fellscream Blast with the Il'gynoth.
Maybe, but he could just be dead to a couple Garrots now, not even the whole shebang, because he's at 6.
Oh yeah, that's true. He doesn't even need the full combo. I was thinking he might need to do the full pop-off here with all the spell damage. But Glory, yeah, what? Penflinger to clear off minions, clear off minions, clear off minions. You want to play some spell damage, I think, just to make it so you only need to draw 2 Garrots instead of 3. But either way, I think this is looking like pretty much a lock for Glory. I'd be very surprised if he doesn't get lethal here.
He just has too much mana. The Swindle Foxy is 0 as well because of the Foxy Battle Cry. There's the second Aug Merchant, plenty of health left on board.
Right.
And I think that is going to be the game. I mean, for Chonsu, I see the logic in not removing the board. Oh, Glory looks so stressed. That looked like a pretty clean win to me. But anyway, yeah. Chonsu's got... He had that last turn, the idea of leaving the board, right? Because spending all your mana on clearing it without setting up a lethal the turn after probably did not get him a win in the long run. But not healing at all and not pushing face damage to set up for that. I wonder what was going through his head. Maybe it was the fact that there was Divine Shield, so he couldn't quite guarantee the Arcanist to have 3 targets.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, even then, I just think getting the healing on that turn was so important. Like, I know that it doesn't allow him to go for Il'gynoth plus a swing of the weapon, because you obviously want to double up on the weapon effect, but his opponent was at 15, right? He could have dealt with the Chaos Strike Fury 3-7, which brings him down to 8, which then heals back up to 9. It it honestly just felt like a bit of a blunder from Chonsu at the end in terms of how he was approaching lethal, because he could have still got there even through the lifesteal. And then Glory on the other side seems to be humiliated with himself, can't even look at the camera as he's waving us away, but he got the lethal. It looked fine to me.
Yeah, and the only thing I might have a question of is maybe starting with the Ethereal a bit earlier, like before the Garrote, like you said, to minimize the number of actual bleeds he needed to get. But I think with the amount of board space he generated with the Pen Flingers and the amount of mana he still had left over, pretty much any combination would have been lethal. He would have gone into the bleeds in any case. But maybe he was just stressed for the rest of the series, because as we were outlining at the beginning, the Garrote Rogue seemed like his strongest deck left after the bans here. And in my opinion, even if the Brute DH had been left up, the Garrote Rogue is still the strongest against Chonsu's lineup. It's now getting a bit scarier because now he has to go for Shadow Priest and Face Hunter, which do rely on the early board presence. For Garrote Rogue, that's kind of a bonus, and it's great if you get to win on board, but you have the win con even without it with the Garrotes at the end.
All right, Chonsu, you've gone from a bad matchup to a good matchup. It got a little bit shaky there at the end. Yes, you were probably losing anyway, but we need to calm the nerves, get back in the zone here for the next game, because this is not necessarily, as Gia was saying, like the most targetable deck. I think the Face Hunter is the real weak spot for Glory, but if you can pick up a couple of wins here, get yourself up to 2-1, then you're looking in a much, much more favorable spot in a series that you should be winning overall.
And we do say the Fel DH is favored here because they have so much removal, be it in the form of Fel Barrage, Immolation Aura, Fel Scream Blast, all in hand for Chonsu, and most of those cards, they're also green, Derek, also heal up Chonsu once again, so that early damage that Glory is certain to get can be recouped really easily. The kind of difference maker for Shadow Priest is these two legendary cards. Disciplinarian Gandling is a big one, because you can start to create minions that get out of range of just Immolation Aura or just Talented Arcanist plus Fel Scream Blast. You need to have Arcanist with Immolation Aura a lot of the time. And then there's Elucia to have to think about towards the end. There was that game in the Masters Tour, I remember, where Eddie, I'm gonna miss Eddie so much, kind of fatigued the Demon Hunter by just stealing Il'gynoth.
That's right, yeah. It is not something that should happen. I think that was a blunder from Brox to allow him to be able to get to that point. But you are correct. There's some pretty funky stuff that Elucia can allow you to do. But for Glory, with this hand, it is just absolutely begging for a Tiny Fin or a Deathskip. Because of the specific interaction with Gandling, it kills the minion and then resummons the 4/4. It doesn't transform it into a 4/4, which of course allows you to go Tiny Fin, Raise Dead, Tiny Fin, Raise Dead. It's a little bit all-in and a low-value play, but an incredibly high-tempo play. And then it, of course, unlocks the Voracious Reader as well. But at the moment, he's got all the tools, but none of the ammunition to make it work.
Yeah, Raise Dead pool only containing freshmen at the moment, and the Benedictus picked up this early. He's curving out, but not the way he wants. The Raise Dead just doesn't have anything good in it. It just feels awful to play Gandling, and that's it. I'm sure Chonsu's expecting a couple Tiny Fins to pop out here alongside this, but nothing.
Yeah, what is this? A 4-mana 3/6 into a 5-mana 5/6. Like, 2014 is freaking out at the high power level here of these plays that Glory is doing.
As for Chonsu's clear potential, obviously you want to be not the greediest as possible with all the removal tools, but you want to find the most efficient way. And I'm looking at some type of Fel Scream Blast plus Fel Barrage here as a very easy way to get rid of everything, including the hero power swing into the Gandling, I believe. But that is a Fel Scream used without Arcanist, so it's a bit of healing that you're going to miss later on.
I grow impatient.
It's awkward, isn't it? Because usually with a hand like this, if you had an Arcanist or a Moarg, I would say almost let them have this board. Maybe because you have so much removal in the double Immo, double Fel Scream Blast, you can remove here. But generally as Demon Hunter, it's not worth it to clear 6 power off the board. You can just heal back up afterwards. I do probably think in this instance you are correct. It just feels bad to use 2 removal pieces on a mediocre board.
Yeah. I will say that the Fel Barrage is the most situational of the removal pieces, and probably the hardest to use, so I don't mind getting rid of one of them. But certainly Fellscream Blast or Immolation Aura feels like an expensive price to play. But one thing I do get caught up with sometimes on FelDH is the fallacy of like, oh, I'm wasting healing by playing Fellscream Blast here. But then you take the damage by not clearing the board, so in that way you kind of didn't heal anyway. But in any case, Chonsu went for a halfway play, going for Fury with the Fellscream Blast instead. And Glory going for the raise dead on Gandling. Finally gets a tiny fin here. Immediately raises dead it to get it back, and he does. That's pretty lucky.
I mean, it's incredible ordering. I think this is really, really smart from Glory to specifically kill off the Tiny Fin. Sorry, Tiny Fin, I'm pretty sure that's a crime. And then raise dead it straight back to get another 4-4 here. Very, very smart play from Glory. And now just praying that there is no answer to these 4-4s. No way to deal 1 damage to all minions 4 times over.
I mean, it's there, but it's expensive. And also, it leaves Gandling up.
That's true.
If it's double Immolation Aura. So for Chonsu, is there an alternative? He has to get rid of these because at any point, the number of minions is how much burst damage Glory can get off of Void Touch Attendant, essentially.
Wow, okay, just letting one of them live and saving the second Immolation Aura. I guess Immo does scale a lot better with a lot of draws in his deck with Moarg or any spell damage, but it's still... You know, it's getting a little scary. He's taking a lot of damage and doesn't have that much value in hand.
He just didn't have a good way to get rid of Gandling, so this is really not ideal because he knows every threat Glory plays is going to be transformed into a 4-4. Maybe a saving grace that the Voracious Reader is not going to draw Glory cards, but it's also just attacking for 4 if he plays it here, and I think he should. Yes.
I mean, I think overall, I kind of just disagree with the way that Chonsu played this, because he knew when he took the first clear turn on turn 4 that there was at least 1 raise dead in his opponent's hand, right? Which means that, you know, by giving them Gandling and a 1-drop back to hand, you're giving them very likely a good follow-up turn, whereas if you just hold back for 1 turn, they maybe have to take a dead turn because they can't raise dead anything high value enough. And now he's having to face down this with very little card draw and very little removal.
You bring up a good point, but I do think all of those game plans involve eventually drawing a Moarg or an Arcanist to go with your other Immolation Aura. We saw from Chonsu, he deliberately held on to at least 1 to have that out, because if he had gone for ignore that first board with the Gandling and 2 1-drops, he takes damage, Glory plays maybe 1 or 2 minions, then Chonsu removes everything. If the raise dead hits Gandling once again, he's in the same spot as long as he doesn't have a Moarg. The difference being that maybe more things died before you killed Gandling, so it's less likely for it to be raise deaded.
What is happening? Chonsu losing the bad matchup, sure, against the Garrote Rogue, but just getting rolled over by Shadow Priest. He didn't even put up much of a fight that game. Glory just getting... I mean, I don't even necessarily want to call it the nuts. Like, he drew Gandling, which was nice, but he had to just play it on turn 4 without any additional 4-4s to come down alongside it. And the removal, despite being all there for Chonsu, it just wasn't enough.
Just such a weird pan out. Like, raise dead into Gandling often feels very, very slow in aggressive mirrors, but it turns out it's quite powerful against the type of hand that Chonsu ended up with here. But again, it was the turn before this that I felt Chonsu had the first real decision, right? I was looking at Fellscream Blast, Hero Power Swing Gandling, which would have put it to 2 HP with the Fellscream, right? And then you go Fel Barrage. That would have meant 3 things were in the raise dead pool, so it's not a guaranteed Gandling raise dead. But I think Chonsu killed off 2 minions, which meant it was guaranteed Gandling to be back in the hand. So maybe that was where something could have gone a bit differently. But again, I don't fault him for not going for a full board clear, because at some point he still really needed a talented Arcanist or Moarg to get the full value.
Well, to be optimistic for Chonsu, Glory has won, I think, with the 2 decks that are easiest for him to do so first off the gate. The Rogue, I think, almost guaranteed to get a win at some point if you play it correctly. The Priest, we know what it can do with all its disruption tools. The Face Hunter is just such a classic aggro deck. It's so vulnerable to anti-aggro on the other side. Like, it's easy to clear the boards. It's easy to heal up out of range of their burn. This has to be, like, surely this is an unwinnable matchup for the Hunter. This is like one of the worst matchups in a long time in Hearthstone.
You guys were saying in the Master Store, like Luna had tested 36 in favor of the Demon Hunter versus Hunter. I don't know if it's that favored, but it certainly does feel like an uphill climb for Hunter, because even the old OTK Demon Hunter was favored against Hunter just because of the power of all the healing you could get. And this deck runs even more removal, more of the healing, none of the bursts that you don't need to get lethal, you just win on the board. It just depends if Chonsu can finally find his Moargs, get the skull timely, but, well, Chonsu does have Neophyte on curve, which does get that chip damage going, but Chonsu's in no rush.
Ooh, probably. Okay, I guess I can understand trading. For me, the real debate was just whether or not you play Thalnos, and I think with Fell Scream, and especially now Immolation in hand, it's better saved for some removal, because a lot of these Hunter minions have 2 health.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Buffed Volpertinger is included, and just having any form of buff on your healing or AoE, even if it's the least efficient in Thalnos, is a big, big deal in this matchup. You need to be a little bit greedy with the healing, I find.
Glory just saying, why do I bother even having a hand at all? Just give me a tube directly from the deck to the board, because he's just slamming down top deck after top deck. 2-drop into 3-drop is, of course, absolutely insane. And again, Chonsu here being very, very liberal with his removal pieces, going here for a clear that kills off the Neophyte, leaves the Man-Crick on board. But I guess the upside is cycling this Thalnos is worth quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I did say he does need to be a bit greedy, but the way to kill Man-Crick there was double Chaos Strike if he didn't use Thalnos, which feels awful, right? I'm thinking he's holding onto the coin for the Jace. And Glory here, faced with the decision of Rhino or Volpertinger, takes the Rhino, but clears the Thalnos. Doesn't give Chonsu the information that he's necessarily setting up for a Rhino turn, but Rhino is still pretty good against any leftover Moargs on board or Talented Arcanist, etc.
Yeah, that's right. I think this Fell Demon Hunter is sometimes forced to play minions. And at the end of the day, it's a 5-mana 7/6 as well. Like, it's not like he's spending the rest of his mana on proactive plays if he picks Volpertinger, which is probably a higher tempo play overall if, as I was saying, you can spend the rest of your mana. But here, slam a Rhino on the board. It's kind of tough to remove.
Yeah, not the easiest deal. Even gets above just Chaos Leech because of the buff from the Warsong Wrangler. And Chonsu, I was thinking he was being so greedy with the coin just to get to an early Jace, but he's used it now to get rid of the Warsong Wrangler. Granted, it was a very awkward turn if he didn't use the coin, but now it looks like he's going to have to face tank the Rhino, which is a disaster.
It's a little scary, isn't it? He, of course, still has plenty of healing with like both Fell Scream Blasts having been played. Jace will be replaying those. I think he's still safe for the moment.
Going to commit the Fury just for healing here as well. I like this.
Yep.
Needs to respect any burst from Glory there. And Glory is just out of minions. He has Companion, I suppose, but he can just go for a purely off-board game plan now. If we plan out the burst, if it's Rinling's hero power this turn, that's 4. Aim shot, hero power is 10 over 2 turns plus the quick shot. It's a lot. It's not 27.
Yeah, it is a lot. It's not 27. It's also not the 40 that you're actually going to have to deal once all the other healing comes down from Chaos Leech, Jace, Fell Scream Blast, second Aldraki Warblades. There's just infinite heal in this deck. This is truly what it preys upon, is just burn decks. You just cannot get there.
I will say some of the heal is dependent on there being minions on the other side of the board, so Glory made an executive decision to still develop something because he did not have enough burst from hand to get there. But I think, well, he doesn't have the option, obviously, to play minions anymore, but even if he did, he probably isn't supposed to play them from this point onward. Just weave in hero powers, you can get there in 3 turns, I think?
Yeah, I think it's as good a shot as any with a piercing shot, quick shot, aim shot. Using the second aim shot here in order to spend his mana more quickly to get that quick shot played, I think is understandable for sure. Just means that he can hopefully cycle through to the second quick shot, another Rhino, ways to spend his mana.
I mean, it's insane. These 2 cards in hand deal 5 and then the hero power deals 6. It's 11, right? next turn. So he is kind of out of burst by that point, but just a couple more hero powers potentially gets there. And if Chonsu develops anything, well, Glory's got secrets in the way, so he's not under any pressure, right? Didn't quite catch which secrets he took, but if there's an explosive, that can also be a form of damage.
There's a freezing in there, and the other one I'm not sure.
So for Chonsu, you kind of just want to play the Il'gynoth. But if there's freezing trap, it is really not going to be able to attack. I wonder if it's just there on board just so he has something to heal off of with Jace.
Yes, sure.
Oh, he wouldn't heal, sorry, because the Il'gynoth turns it into damage. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, right, you are.
Okay, but Glory empties the hand so he can draw with Quick Shot. Chonsu should be pretty happy to see a minion on the other side, but he's not actually healing that much from Jace, right? No I-Beam, no Chaos Leech played. It's just like one Fell Scream that actually heals Chonsu.
Yeah, just the Fell Scream Blast currently, which means that you maybe go for Skull of Gul'dan. Like, even if you just end up with Immolation Aura at the end, like, you're still relatively unlikely to be dead. Like, there's not many burst cards left for the opponent, especially if you don't play a minion for Rhino to attack into.
Oh, but now he can just go, like, heal for 18 here, right? And play a Fell Barrage. I like this. I think it's safe. Glory still has one more Piercing Shot, one more Quick Shot, I believe, in terms of burst. So if Chonsu just heals here with the more Arcanist Fell Scream Blast on his own board, he is safe.
I mean, I was wondering if you just saved the lethal combo till next turn, because he did have the 36 damage with Il'gynoth, Double Artificer, and the Talented Arcanist as well. But it turns out he would have been dead, so good job not doing that, because the Rhino on the other side. And I think at this point, he's probably got this one in the bag. With the Jace, the Il'gynoth, the Hunter just can't get there.
Amidst the flames.
He's gonna make quick work of this board, and then I think it's time for Tempo Il'gynoth the turn after.
Boom, dead Rhino.
Glory already throwing it down. You never wait for the Jace animations to finish, and to be fair, he had pretty much no outs from this point because his only burst left is Quick Shot and Piercing Shot. Not nearly enough to get through however much Chonsu has at the end of this turn.
Yep, just a wrap. The Fell Demon Hunter finally doing what it's supposed to do and beating an aggro deck as the premier anti-aggro deck in the format. Does get Chonsu off to a single win on the board. Hunter, as predicted, is going to be at least a bit more of a challenge for Glory to get a win with, as he still has two bad matchups left over. We're talking Quest Shaman, not a great one, and Control Priest as the final remaining deck for Chonsu, something that we're a little bit less experienced with in this particular meta. But to start things off with the Quest Shaman, I mean, are we on the same page? It's just a disaster matchup for Hunter.
I wouldn't quite go so far as to say disaster. I do think it's Shaman favored for sure, but Hunter can get there. I think the Rhino is a very powerful card in this matchup because Shaman does have to play minions to complete their quest a lot of the time, and the Hunter, especially if they can hit Explosive Trap and such, have the True Aim Crescent, can deal quite a lot of damage in a single turn with the Rhino. And the Shaman's not running any base healing in their deck, right? They have to discover it. So if the Hunter can get in a position where they've got the Rhino down and then the rest of the hand is burst, it is very possible to beat Shaman. Sorry, the base healing is Canal Slogger.
Right.
Not about that. But it's situational, right? If there's no minions on the side of the Hunter's board, it doesn't actually get to heal right away. And that can be a big deal. I think skilled Hunter players will recognize when it's time to stop getting on board because Canal Slogger is a little bit too good.
That's right, and I think it's one of the main things that led the Japanese players to include Tidal Surge a couple weeks ago in Grandmasters, which when I was talking to Orange, he was saying he was this close to submitting in his Masters Tour lineup. He likes the tech, as I think a lot of players do when you're expecting this much aggro. But for me, I think that for Chonsu, because on average you dominate the board so much in those starting turns, you're able to just like play out a Canal Slogger on turn 4 when they're at that point already just trying to burn you down. And you're fairly likely to be able to just attack face on the following turn without them being able to interact with it in any meaningful way. And if they have to sink 4 or 5 burn into just killing a Canal Slogger, that's great in its own right.
That is true. I'm unsure if you do actually get that wide on average as Shaman, but certainly with Lightning Bloom, it is a very likely outcome here. This is quite perfect for Chonsu because he can unlock the first quest with Lightning Bloom, Feral Spirit, and Perpetual Flame, completely clears any board development from Glory, and he gets ahead on board. This is the type of Shaman opener that gets there.
This is disgusting. I think it's also absolutely time to go Perpetual Flame. You could try and greed it and get more minions in the mix, but what if Man Crit comes down, Guardian Orc Merchant, both the cards that are in Glory's hand? I don't think that you want to be messing around with any potential for your opponent to be able to mess with your Perpetual Flame.
Okay, Glory's hand is pretty good, all things considered, though. He did obviously get the absolute best response from Chonsu to his early development, but the Mancrik trades well on board currently. The Rhino can give him, what, minimum 5 burst over, sorry, 4 burst, and probably 5 a bit later on. But this turn is slow.
It's really slow. He's got both the Rhinos for a strong follow-up, I suppose. But the fact that he knows that Chonsu drew 2 cards off of the Dungeoneer, that's a guaranteed Canal Slogger. That's guaranteed 6 healing, if not more, at some point as the game progresses. And also with double Serpent Shrine Portal, another Primal Dungeoneer. Chonsu's hand is turbo.
Yeah, and he knows it's Canal Slogger as well because there's no Marsh Spawn in the deck. That can sometimes be the Elemental drawn, but Chonsu is running double Overdraft, no Entrap Sorceress, no Marsh Spawn. Just really making sure he can get to the Slogger consistently. And Glory has no choice.
Yep, you clear the board, you deal a fair bit of damage. Like, it's a good turn for Hunter at this point in the game. I just don't think it's going to be good enough because this turn Serpent Shrine summons you the 3/3 as well. And then next turn Primal Dungeoneer, Canal Slogger, whatever you need, it's all there.
He gets the Sorceress anyway, and just a minion with high health is such a big deal because it's not super vulnerable to Rhino. Like, imagine if this was a Ironbeak Owl instead. Glory might be a little bit scared.
It's possible, yeah, as you said, with no minions to attack into. But wow, it looks like Glory is actually just continuing to play out minions on this turn, which is a pretty interesting choice actually at this point.
Yeah, because he knows about the Slogger, like you said. He's pushing the extra 1 by getting that adorable infestation, but this makes it such a clean Slogger for Chonsu, right? If you leave just Rhino on board or nothing on board, then the Slogger has to hit nothing or kill or die immediately upon trading. But now Chonsu gets to potentially double up on this healing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess at this point you're not really committing to never playing a minion for the rest of the game. And what do you do if they just play the Canal Slogger and don't even attack on the following turn? Maybe in the best case scenario you get Piercing Shot and you can just kill it off on the following turn, but that's still a bunch of burn just wasted. Glory knows what's up. One of the quickest games I think we've ever had here in Grandmasters. It's over. Game 5.
Yeah, the fact that it got to, what, turn 6 and it was still one of the fastest ever. It's only in APAC that you get to see this type of speed. Because there's only one Blaze in Europe, as it happens. I do think that the Rhino hand is good against Shaman, but it does need to be supported by a little bit more card draw or burst. Like you mentioned, the Piercing Shot here. Like, Glory was not out of it if he had top deck Piercing Shot into a Barracuda Bane or something like that. It is overall favored for the Shaman though, and it will come down to Chonsu on the Control Priest now, trying to complete the reverse sweep with this build that doesn't have Blade Master Samuro anymore after the to Apotheosis, but he does have double Desperate Prayer, so there's healing in there.
There's healing, there's still procs for Xyrella, even without, as you said, the Apotheosis and also the Renews that have also made way for, I think Pandaren Importer is a rough facsimile of what Renew was doing in the deck. It provides you a little bit of extra value in order to be able to go alongside your palm readings, reduce more cards, that sort of thing. It's a much less reactive deck, I find, than it was beforehand. It relies more on being proactive. But when you play the deck, you start to remember some of the broken things that Priest was doing. Like, it has some serious tempo options, just with all of the mana reduction that it can do.
Yeah, and the Elec mount is a big part of that, especially since it can go down to 6 mana with the palm reading. And there's new Priest spells ever since United and Stormwind launched, like Call of the Grave, that can also get you tempo here and there. The fact that it can go down to 0 off of palm reading is also a very big deal. But Glory, with the opening hand, no proactive development, that is exactly what Chonsu wants to see.
Yeah, it allows him to just get ahead on board. One Maker, Palm Readings, Coin Ogremancer is a very powerful few starting turns. Even if it's not developing stats on board every turn, it should get him some strong responsive answers as well. But Glory does find a good pickup. He can now play a hand, put forward some damage, and lead up into Barik Kodobane without just passing every turn.
And I love the patience from Chonsu. He could technically coin out the Holy Smite just to stop some bleeding, but he can make it cost 0 with palm reading next turn anyway. Hold on to the coin for earlier Ogremancer or earlier Elec Mount. Just one of those game-breaking plays that really locks Glory out.
Also, one of the things I see happen more and more these days is that reducing 0 mana spells with palm readings isn't useless. If they play the Cult Neophyte, they do stay at 0 instead of going up to 1. So it could be a pretty big deal later on in the game. Who knows? But for the moment, at least, as I was saying, Chonsu has this kind of hand where it's not especially reactive, but if he can get a foot in the door, it will lock down board control the second he's in the lead.
Mancrick's a big top deck for Glory, though, because now he has a 50-50 off of Barik Kodobane to get the Mancrick's wife, one aimed shot already in hand. So even if it's a bit off curve, I think it's right for Glory to go for that. For Chonsu, though, Coin Ogremancer doesn't feel particularly strong this turn because there's already 3 attack on board that can value trade it, and the Rhino also presents a pretty big threat. So gonna go fishing first. Devouring Plague looks decent.
Yeah, it's pretty good, huh? Probably just the best overall. Going with the Rustrock Viper first. Okay, this makes sense. If he's met with Rhino as the response on the following turn, which is somewhat expected, Devouring Plague might be able to kill it off, and Rhino's just bad anyway.
Chonsu's reaction to the Barik is... justified. He dodges. From his perspective, could have still been a 2 out of 3, but for Glory, that was a 50-50 with the aim shot in hand. But it does mean, however, that there is tons of burst in hand for Glory.
It's kind of interesting that Glory traded there. There's no Apotheosis in the deck. Like, could we not have just snuck 4 damage face there?
Maybe. As Hysteria is also something to think about. I wonder if that played better around it.
Yeah, maybe. I have my suspicions. This is Face Hunter. The name is... The game plan is literally in the name.
Eric, it's not Apotheosis. It's Elec Mount that he's worried about.
Oh, yeah. Okay, fair enough, yeah. A double reduced Elec Mount. Yeah, okay. Sure. That sounds reasonable enough to play around.
Okay, but for Glory here, Neophyte has entered the hand. This is the stage, the first turn where Hunter stops to think. You already know they're counting damage. How much do they have in hand? From Chonsu's perspective, at the minimum, there is an aim shot and a quick shot in hand, which is already like 5 plus the 4 damage hero power. It's a lot, but Chonsu's almost at full HP, so Glory gonna go for board presence yet again. I was thinking this turn might involve Rinlings with the Cult Neophyte instead, but I guess there's no secret that's particularly useful to him just yet because Chonsu doesn't have any rushing minions.
And so because of that, just loading up pressure to the absolute max. Whether or not he knows it, this Cult Neophyte is absolutely huge here because it means that Chonsu is 1 mana off being able to go Pandar and Coin Elec. Whoa, sorry, I just needed to sneeze, my goodness.
No worries. Yeah, that is a very big deal, and the lack of Cyrella is another big deal here. I mean, he could take a turn to just play Ogremancer, Desperate Prayer to stay alive and try to set up the Elec Mount, but boy is that scary.
And so if you just go max heal on this turn, you can heal for 7 up to 26. There is, 10 damage on the other side of the board. You're very unlikely to be dead. And then Elec on the following turn. It looks pretty good.
For prefer the Ogremancer to a hero power this turn, though. I mean, he could coin it out still. That is reasonable because this mount will go back to 5, right? After next turn. So he can still, at the worst, play Pandaren plus the Elec mount. But just developing something for Glory to maybe sink some damage into, and if he doesn't, it's obviously very strong. I appreciate.
Yeah, I think this makes sense, right? Because if you go for Pandaren Elec, there is 0 chance that any minions are attacking face. It's just too much taunt in the way. But burst damage might be your concern. If they just point everything face and then they have double aimed shot hero power, for example, that might get a little bit scary. Because you know, at the very minimum, because of the barrack, that they have quick shot plus aimed shot. So I think coin hero power is very smart.
And for Glory now, this is ideally the turn where he starts pointing some of that burst damage face, but because of the Ogremancer in the way, he either goes face with everything and then accepts that he won't get any more minion damage, or he delays the burst to another turn, which is slightly problematic because next turn he can only go aim shot, hero power, and not immediately fit in the quick shot. Still, I think it's worth it to go for this though, because he can sort of punish every play that isn't Elec mount this turn.
Oh man, he's so close with double aim shot hero power. That's what, exactly 12 on the following turn, so he just needs his opponent to not heal at all. But that may be easier said than done.
True. I mean, obviously Chonsu's so scared of freezing trap here, so I don't think he's meant to go for Apo and Zyrella. But the Elec mount, he's still safe beyond that, right? Just Elec mount.
Hero
Can he
power?
fit in the importer? Does he need to hero power? Because Glory's max burst is 10, right? From hand.
With aim shot, hero power, isn't that 12?
Oh, it is 12. You're right. Sorry.
Yeah.
Two buffs. So the hero power was necessary to stay alive.
Yeah. I think this is the forced play. Obviously, it turned out in this instance that it wasn't the freezing trap, but as you said, the fear was too much. You just have to pray that it isn't there. And then, of course, now with all the tutus coming down, I guess Glory can just sacrifice all his minions into them so that the fear of a freezing trap once again stops Chonsu from attacking.
Yeah, agreed. Glory's board is just a formality at this point. It is well and truly stopped by the Elec mount, so yeah, just get the attack through, try to find the freezing. There it is. Isolate the Ogremancer, which also locks out Apotheosis as any healing out for Chonsu. It's looking like he needs Desperate Prayer again off the top or something from the importer to really get this done.
It's so close, isn't it? He just needs the tiniest little bit extra. It can come from heal, raise dead, wand maker, if that's necessary. I
really don't want to raise dead.
I don't want to either, but he can do it in the absolute if it's absolutely necessary. But it looks like he's leading up to Apotheosis attack.
Apotheosis ripped the quick shot, but then is he just gonna hero power his face here and not give Glory the quick shot next turn? Ooh.
Okay.
Very cool. Very cool. I was looking at Importer, but again, the spell has to not be in your deck, so he has no access to Desperate Prayer here. He needed Renew off of that. But the Importer could get Glory nothing, because his deck also runs all the burst spells, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think what's even left in there. Like, is he not running Wound Prey, maybe, would be the best you can get? Yeah.
Arcane Shot, but...
There you go, that was the out. Man, this is a smart play from Chonsu. This is very clever.
Yeah, I like this a lot.
So Raised Dead, what is in the Raised Dead pool? There's like Mancrick, no Rhinos, I don't think, right, have been played.
Oh, I don't think so. Also, the Ogremancer just has Apotheosis on it, so you cannot attack into it. Like, Glory should just kill off the Elucia here so that Freezing Trap still isolates the Ogre, and he can't get the Condemns.
Yeah, another Condemn will do it, right, because it spawns first and then does the damage.
It is such a standoff, the Ogre versus all the minions from Glory. Quick shot in hand. If Chonsu cannot heal this turn, he is still dead.
Oh, he misses Alex! He misses out on the heal. He can go Mage Scribe, Explosive Trap, right? Because he
Prayer and hit prayer, I guess.
Yeah, prayer. Well, he'll have 1 mana left over, so it could be prayer or
Flash heal. Yeah.
Flash heal. Yeah.
Oh man, that's the only out.
Gotta be.
And I guess if he doesn't find it, he just prays that this was a bluff for freezing, but simply not going to be the case.
That's true, yeah. He still doesn't know, does he? He misses. He attacks. Oh! Disaster for Chonsu. It looked like he was getting there. He was against Face Hunter. He had a good matchup. He had the good hand. He pressed the hero power with the coin on the necessary turn to survive at 2 health. But it wasn't enough. As Glory, this man cannot wait to get off of camera. Whatever he's feeling, it is, I think, just pure shame. I don't know why. I think he played a pretty good series overall, but he does not seem to be happy with himself.
I don't know. I mean, he was smiling at the end. I think Glory is just kind of shy, you know. It's definitely not the type of reaction you'd expect from somebody who has already been literally at the top of the Hearthstone competitive community, current world champion. But I love to see that he's still so invested in every game that comes forward, right? Glory in particular, I recall him tweeting out after Tom60229 was relegated last season that every world champion has been relegated now except for, well, implied except for him. So I'm sure he was feeling the pressure, especially at the end of last week. So getting a win on the table, I'm sure it's just a bit of relief overflowing from Glory.
Well, he's done it, and it's devastating, however, for Chonsu, as both of these players were right down at the bottom of the leaderboard, in terms of the points they had gained thus far. Chonsu, I believe, going to stay now on 2 points after 3 weeks of play here in GM, which is you know, so far from what we expect from Chonsu, but at the same time, I would be saying the same thing about Glory. There's an even higher standard for Glory. As you said, he is our current world champion. We hold him to the absolute highest level of play. And aside from 1 or 2 things that I maybe disagreed with from him there, I think he showed good understanding of the aggro matchups. Bringing full aggro is a very, very valid strategy, despite what some people may say. And it's working out well for him so far, taking down the anti-aggro lineups, which means against the combo decks, he's going to be unstoppable.
Definitely feels like it. For Chonsu, I feel like this was a very good idea, but maybe the meta has just shifted too much that, especially with the nerfs to Control Priest, it just doesn't quite get there as consistently as before. The full hand that you're used to seeing from Priest having all the answers, it's either too fast for them to accrue the resources or too expensive because Renew has been nerfed. You have to play Discover effects that cost 2 and 3 and some things like that. But for Chonsu, I do appreciate the idea, and